Hi, Virginie. How are you? Anybody else there? Just Virginie? One-on-one lesson? Maybe it's just the two of us. No, I can see there's a few more of you online. Say hello. Ah, you're feeling shy today. How is everybody today? Hi, Saeed. How are you? Hope you are all well today. Hi, Isabel. Thanks for joining. Okay, so just going to wait for a couple more people to arrive. Have more of a group atmosphere. Thanks for asking, Virginie. I'm great today. Thanks. So, while we wait for some other people to arrive, I'm going to ask the first question of the day. So, as you know, today's lesson is all about the prepositions in, on, and at. So, I'm going to ask you a time-related question. So, when is Bastille Day? First of all, do you know what Bastille Day is? I'll give you a clue. It's a French bank holiday, but in English, we have anglicized the name. So, when is Bastille Day? I'll wait for your answers. If you're not sure what it is, please write and maybe somebody could help you. Ah, Saeed. You're very quick. You're the first one. Yes. Exactly. Yes. Good. Is there anybody out there who could use the preposition? So you have a choice of 3. It's in the title. In, on, or at. You have a 1 in 3 chance of being right. Maybe I'll help you out here. So, Bastille Day is on the 14th of July. Almost. Good guesses, everybody. So if you didn't already guess, obviously it's the national French holiday. In English, we call it Bastille Day. So, sometimes confuses French people because we gave it our own name. But as you see there, I've used the preposition on. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. When you use on, when you use in, and when you use at. So it's a little bit different compared to French, and that's why it can be a little bit difficult sometimes. So I'm going to help you out here. So first of all, we're going to start with the preposition in. So when we use in, you're talking about general dates. So this could be for something like a century. So for example, if we talk about in the 19th century, for example, that's when we could use it. So yes, Saeed, I will get to the on in a moment. Thanks for asking. So another example with in is a decade. So a decade is a space of 10 years. So in the 1980s, for example. So the 80s were a decade. Okay, another time is if we are talking about a year. So if you want to talk about last year, for example, you would say in 2019. So another time when we use in is when we are talking about a month. So for example, right now we are in June, but tomorrow we will be in July. Okay, so another one is we also use it for seasons. So whenever we talk about spring, summer, autumn, or fall if you use American English, and winter. So if I ask you what season we are in now, I think most of you would agree that we are in summer. Unless you are on the other side of the world, maybe it's winter over there. So another time when we use it as well is when we talk about times of the day. So we can say in the morning, in the evening, but there's a big exception. We say at night in English. So if you wanted to talk about your day, you could say in the morning I did this, in the afternoon I did this, or at night I did this. Okay, let me know if you have any questions at any point with regards to that. I know it's a lot of information, but it's really important because when you talk about different times, you definitely need to use the different prepositions. Okay, so now we're going to move on to on. So obviously the example I gave you with Bastide, this was with on. So with on, this is for something more specific. So a date is something specific. So maybe somebody asked me, when is your YouTube live on prepositions? And I would say it is on the 30th of June. Today is a precise date. So again, let me know if you have any questions at this point. So another time when you can use on. Oh no, sorry, let me move on to at. So now we're moving on to at. So at is even more specific. So when we are talking about the time, for example. So let's imagine that you have a meeting. Somebody says, what time is the meeting? And you could say it's at 2 o'clock, for example. Or 2 p.m. So now I'm going to ask you all a question. When is your birthday? So there are two possibilities here. If you just want to give me the month, there's one answer. And if you want to give me the specific date, there is another answer. So for example, if I start with myself, I could say my birthday is November. Which preposition do I use here? Let's see who is the first to answer. So Kelly says on. Anybody else want to join in Does anyone agree on? Okay, others? Do you agree with Kelly and Virginie? Is it my birthday is on July or my birthday is on November? Ah, Virginie, no, in July. No problem, Saeed. So the question is, when is your birthday? Yes. So, good. Okay, yes. So, if we are talking about the month you are born, just the month, with the month you need to say in. So, my birthday is in November. But if you want to say the specific date, then it changes. So if you give the specific date, my birthday is on the 6th of November. So as soon as you put a date in, it changes. It's no longer in November, it's on the 6th of November. And just also remember to always, when you use the number, to always put the correct ending. So, no, don't worry, it's fine, Saeed, no problem. Make sure you always have the number in this form. So if it's the 6th or the 13th, or if you're saying the 23rd or the 1st, whenever we talk about dates in English, we don't say 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th. So, and obviously dates in English, dates in general only go up to the 31st, so you just need to know the 1st to the 31st. So, just lots of th. Okay, great. So now we're going to move on to using in, on, and at for places. So, for example, if I ask you, where do you live? But I just want you to, I don't want your address. I don't want to know exactly where you live. And I'm asking for the city, the country, or the neighborhood. Which preposition would you use? So, for example, me, I live in Paris, or I live in France. So, which preposition would you use? So, if you could write the answer, that would be great. Okay, so Kelly lives in Lille. Virginie lives in Pont-Saint-Marie. Great. Anybody else? Does everybody agree? In. I live in La Frette. Yes. Yes. I think it's all a unanimous decision. Yes, exactly. I live in the 14th arrondissement, for example, because this is a specific neighborhood. Yes, exactly, Saeed. Saeed also lives in Paris, and you live in the 19th arrondissement. And Sylvie, you live in Belleville. Exactly. Great. Okay, so now let's imagine that you want to talk about either the street that you live on, the specific street, without the number, just the name of your street, or you want to talk about the floor that you live on. So obviously, especially here in Paris, we usually live in apartments. So, or for example, if we want to talk about, so just to answer your question, Saeed, yes, it's quite common in English. I would say arrondissement, because in Paris it's quite well known, but another way you could also talk about it is a district or a neighborhood. But it's quite well known that in Paris that you have the arrondissement system. So, but I would say district or neighborhood. Okay, so let's talk about the street or the floor. So I live, let's say, for example, that I live here. I live Rue de Courcelles, for example. Which preposition would I use? Or I live the 4th floor. So if you could write your answers, what do you think? You're all thinking very hard. So, Virginie, first one to answer. Thank you very much. So you're saying at. Anybody else got a different answer? At 35 Rue du Courcelles. Yes. On the 5th floor. Saeed, you know your stuff. Yes. So the difference is, if you only say the street name, you would say I live on Rue de Courcelles. But the moment that you add the number, you have to change it, like you said, Saeed. So it would then become I live at 35 Rue de Courcelles. So it's a small difference, but it changes in English depending on if you have the number. So maybe you're talking about a street in general. You're talking about a shop. You'll say the shop is on Rue de Depart, for example. But then when someone asks you where specifically is that shop, and you say it's at number 5, it needs to be changed. Thanks, Saeed. You studied already. You know your stuff. Great. So that leads me on to talking about at. So we use at for specific locations. So as we already spoke about, when you use the exact address, that's when we use it. Or when you are talking about an exact location. Imagine you are telling a story in the past and you could say, I was at the office. I was at the train station. This is a specific place. That's also when we use at. The general rule of thumb for both for time and for place. In is more general. On is more specific, at is very specific. So it works for both time and for place. So you just need to learn what is considered like general, what is considered more specific, and what is considered the most specific. So that's the general rule of thumb, the kind of general rule. Yes. Okay, great. So I got a question for all of you. So would you be able to tell me, where is your workplace? So you can be as general or as specific as you wish for privacy reasons. Maybe you want to tell me the general area, the general town. Maybe you want to tell me the street. Or you could tell me the location. For example, if you do not work at an office, where do you work instead? So for example, I work at Tour Montparnasse, for example. Yes, Saeed, my workplace is in Paris, and it's in the 5th arrondissement, or in the 8th arrondissement, or district, or you could say. Great. Yes. Yes, you work in Paris. Perfect. Exactly. Good. Ah, great. I work at home. Yes, exactly. That's a specific location, your home. I think a lot of people are working at home these days due to COVID. Great. I work in Troyes. Yes. I work at the... Kelly, you work at the shopping centre, Eurolil. Yes. Nice shopping centre. I've been there before. Oops, spelling mistake. Sorry. Shopping. Great. Nice. No worries. Okay, great. So now we're just going to finish off with a little game. So I'm going to try and see if I can get the points. So I'm going to give you a word or a phrase, and I want you to tell me if it's in, if it's on, or if it's at. So try to be as fast as possible. I'm sorry if any of you have a slow internet connection. Okay, so the first one. Tuesday, is it in, is it on, or is it at? So waiting for the first answer. Okay, first one in. Any other answers? Nadia on, Virginie on, Kelly on. Yes. Great. On. I think the general consensus is on. Great. Yes, exactly. On, exactly. So me, I would say my YouTube live is on Tuesday. Good. Great. Okay, we're going to move on to the next one. So January. So the month of January. Which preposition would we use before January? In, on, or at? So, the answers are coming in. We have in. Kelly also says in as well. In January, in. Yes. Oh, Saeed, you're very specific. But yes, exactly. So we would say in January. Good. Okay, so for the next one, we're talking about another time. So we're talking about the 1970s. So when there were hippies. So in, on, or at for the 1970s? Okay, it's got on. Nadia also thinks on. Virginie says in, on. So when we talk about decades, it's in the 1970s. So on is when it's more specific. So we don't consider a kind of decade to be very specific because it's a time period of about 10 years. So we're going to move on now to places. So if I say the 7th floor. So Nadia is the first one. On. Do others agree with her? Have some other answers. At. Saeed says on the 7th floor. So, good logic, Kelly. It is a specific location, but it's an exception because whenever we talk about floors, we say on because we think of it as a kind of surface in English. So that's the reason why. But it's good logic to think in this way. So, with floors, we always say, for example, if you work at a hotel and you ask where the hotel room is, I believe that somebody in this chat works at a hotel. You would say your room is on the 7th floor, for example. Okay, we just have a couple more examples. So let's talk about the supermarket. So imagine that your partner, your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, friend rings you and says, "Where are you?" You would say, "I am the supermarket." So, is it in, is it on, or is it at? Okay, we've got a few different answers here. We've got an at, we've got an in, we've got another at. So, okay, yes. So the answer is at. This is considered a specific location. So you would ring, I am at the supermarket, or maybe you are still at work. I am at the office right now. Christoph, it is possible to say on the supermarket, but this sounds like you are on the top of the supermarket and that you are on the roof. So it's correct to say, but it gives a little bit of a strange image. So that's probably not where you are. You are probably looking at some food inside the supermarket. Okay, great. And I'll give you one final one before we go. So here we go. 5 Oxford Street. So Oxford Street is a very popular shopping street in London. Maybe you know it if you've been to London before. So is it in, is it on, or is it at? So Christoph says in, Isabel says at, Nadia says in. Okay, says at. Okay, great. So a few different answers. There's people going between in and between at. So, Sylvie says on as well. Okay, so when it comes to addresses, addresses are extremely specific. Therefore, we use at. So in is for general. So usually when we talk about countries and cities and neighborhoods, this is when we use in. Okay. So whenever you have an address, it's at the specific location. So as I said just before, try to remember it in this way. At is more general, on you're getting more specific, and in is usually the most specific. So the reason I'm using my hands in this way is usually when you see a diagram, it's usually an upside down triangle and it's become more and more specific. So if you Google in, on, at, you will see a picture of this triangle that I speak of as well. Okay, great. So that's it for today. Thank you all so much for your participation. You guys did a really good job. I know it's quite difficult because it is a little bit different in English, but it's great. So just keep practicing and you will get it right. Great. So I hope you all have a lovely evening and hope to see you all again at the next YouTube live next Tuesday. So I will be here again on Tuesday. So on the, let me check the date, on, when is it? On the 7th of July. That's the date. Thank you. Have a nice evening. Bye bye.